Hi everyone.
Hey.
I'm back again. I don't know if you saw the presentation earlier, but this time I'm joined by some friends and colleagues. I guess it's better if you both introduce yourselves rather than me butcher it. So I'll come to you first, Rob, if you want to introduce yourself and kind of what you do.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good to be here. Learning a lot from all of you. I'm here as the non-exec director for Alchemy Exchange. But in the other part of my life, I work at Warner Brothers Discovery. I head up digital revenue and operations at some of the biggest websites in the world, CNN, Eurosport, a bunch of others. I was very early into kind of advertising technology within the digital side of the industry.
James?
Hey everybody, great to be here. Very aware that we are the only people between you guys and the GOAT, Raoul Pal, so we'll try and be as interesting as possible. I work for the Coca-Cola company. One.
Just stop there.
I'm part of the marketing team, and I specialize in something called media planning and buying, which is essentially buying advertising space, specifically digital advertising space. And we believe that the best way to do that is through programmatic buying, which is something that I think we're going to talk to you about today. In previous roles, though, for most of my career, I was at media buying agencies, so we provided media buying services to a range of clients. Some more notable ones would be Diageo, Amazon, Microsoft. So I do have some experience with trying to talk to these companies about blockchain solutions and the capabilities of them within the context of marketing. So hopefully I'll be able to bring some insights for you guys today. Hopefully they'll be interesting. I guess that's up to you. Yeah, good to be here.
Great, yeah, and I'm Ben, I'm CEO of Alchemy, a digital marketplace, so kind of helping brands like Warner Brothers, brands like Coca-Cola, find their audiences or monetize their particular websites. I think it's fair to say, and I mentioned this earlier, but like everyone here has been exposed to some kind of advertising at some point online. I think that really is the tip of the iceberg. So everyone's been exposed to this sector, but I don't think many people understand the complexity, how exactly these ads actually appear on websites. So I think it would be quite good, I guess, to level set and explain the programmatic advertising, how we got to this stage today, really, and maybe touch on some of the issues that the current infrastructure creates or causes, depending on how you want to put it, particularly in terms of like the transparency of media buying. Rob, I don't know if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, I suppose I've been in the industry about 20 years, and when I started, I was in sales, and at that point, I was selling quarter-page ads in a magazine, and I was waiting next to the fax machine for a deal to come in. Probably all the way up to 15, 16 years ago that was happening. Not that long ago, really, right? So, you know, it was good fun. You often go to the pub and you take a contract with you and get them to sign it after a few drinks. That still happens a little bit.
Yeah.
But you know, fast forward to today, and I mean, it's a vastly different industry. About 12, 13 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, it started. There was this notion of programmatic advertising, which kind of comes from the finance industry, the trading of assets. And it was, you know, from a Web2 perspective, there's audiences all over the internet. How can we understand who those audiences are through data? So data management platforms came into industry. So who are these people consuming content? You know, how can we target them with an ad that's relevant to give an outcome for an advertiser? So, you know, I remember, you know, embracing this technology as a salesperson, just saying, hey, I'll do it. But what it meant on, you know, if from a sort of protective side for the industry, it was like, well, we didn't need a load of salespeople anymore. It was kind of like, well, actually, you know, I remember telling a lot of executives at a company I worked at, I could sell 3 billion ads with 3 people. And some of them were like, isn't that kind of our job? And actually, but what's happened is actually the whole industry's got a lot smarter. So, I'm a sales leader, but I run a huge amount of different technologies, ranging from these programmatic trading platforms where we trade audiences, to AI tools that are understanding what our audiences are consuming and kicking out sentiment of articles or videos. But ultimately, I'm a salesperson monetizing these environments. So what has happened? The whole industry has got smarter, and actually the salespeople are still here. They're just doing something else, right? They're actually just selling content-led sponsorships, branded content, which is like videos that companies we may make for brands. So the industry's just changed, and actually I think everyone's got smarter. I think people have got paid more because of that as well.
Yeah.
And I suppose, and up to 80% of revenue in the ad industry is traded like this, in digital ad revenue in certain markets. So that's not that long ago. So in the context of what's happening here, I suppose, don't think that these Web2 or these huge corporates aren't interested in this side of the industry, because actually there are problems with all of that. There's a lack of transparency of how these ads get traded. There is a lot of fraud around spoof websites, people not knowing where their adverts have appeared, not being able to track what's happened. And actually from a content creator, you're actually not getting all the money you could from an advertiser, because there's so many steps in this world before the money actually reaches the media owner, which actually affects you guys and our audiences, because it means we're not getting as much funding for our audiences. So blockchain, clearly, we'll get into it further, but blockchain clearly has some applications there. So, it's a case of making sure that, as I suppose on the corporate side, you're understanding what the capabilities are, and that you guys are talking to us and making us learn and understand.
Yeah, what a terrific answer.
Yeah, it was quite good, wasn't it? Yeah.
I was going to take maybe a different angle.
For
level setting, and maybe how I've seen things evolve from the perspective of the buyer. And it would be just a quick 60-second sort of history lesson, won't labour it, but I think it can even sort of go back to the dot-com bubble, where investment was ploughing into websites like pets.com, for example, right, that sort of promised to deliver products or whatever. But the internet wasn't right for e-commerce then. It wasn't quick enough. The pixels were really poor. So that's why the bubble happened, right? And funnily enough, the only successful business model at that time for the internet was actually publishers. Right? They could actually create content and sell the advertising space around it, and advertisers would want to buy that because they would want to speak to their audiences. And it was a simpler time back then, because there was a smaller number of websites that you would want to advertise on, because that's where the majority of the traffic was. If anybody's remembers the days of AOL and MSN and these kind of websites, you could say to them, I'd love 1 million ads, 1 million impressions for my campaign. You give them a tracker. At the end of the campaign, you would reconcile how many ads were served, and then you'd move on. Brilliant, simple. I think that a number of things happened to take us up to the modern day, where we are now. Probably one of the most impactful was Steve Jobs launching the iPhone in 2007. Putting the internet in everybody's pocket on a phone, mobile traffic exploded, and the number of websites that we have available to us to buy advertising on is in the hundreds of thousands. So no longer could you really just go to 1, 2, or 3 sales teams and give them 1, 2, or 3 trackers, right? You have hundreds of thousands of websites you want to buy across, and you can never talk to hundreds of thousands of sales teams, provide hundreds of thousands of trackers on a campaign-by-campaign basis. So enter programmatic, basically, which is what we're going to talk about today. 2 sides to that ecosystem. There's a demand side, for advertisers and for buyers, people who want to buy advertising space. And there's the supply side, DSP on the demand side, SSP on the supply side, which Alchemy are a fantastic version of. But ultimately, in simple terms, these SSPs did do all the due diligence and all the hard work of talking to 100,000 different publishers and websites and integrating them into this piece of technology that would allow advertisers to simply input into the demand side, this is who we're after, this is what we want to achieve, and then it would access the SSP and it would buy that across all of those websites. I guess within that, though, you can potentially see some challenges with the idea that you give an SSP £1 million and say, this is where we want it to go, without having full transparency and full access and full understanding of whether or not that did actually happen. I must say, there are a lot of really good actors in this space, and we work with a lot of really good companies. But the reality is, there are also a lot of bad actors in this space, and that there is a lot of risk, and there are a lot of questions on, I think, a couple of things that Rob said around domain spoofing and people or websites trying to misrepresent what they are. You're not buying what you think you're buying, which are big sort of challenges in advertising in general, but specifically in digital advertising. So there is hopefully you can kind of see where the transparency issues are, and I'm sure we'll get into some of the solutions that blockchain can naturally bring to solve that.
Yeah, I think at first look, just understanding where your money is spent or understanding where your money's being earned from sounds like table stakes, really. It's like that should be how it should be, but it's not, for the reasons you guys very eloquently explained. And I think that the potential for a blockchain, if you look at it in its purest sense, like outside of what we do at Alchemy with ads, just in terms of like displaying transactions on chain, like the coolest thing about a blockchain is that you can see all the transactions that took place between wallet A and wallet B. Like it gives you a complete immutable record of what went on. And I think that, probably for a lot of you, you're kind of getting exposure to what is a very complicated business that appears as like video ads or display ads or TV ads, but fundamentally that being 100% transparent, kind of the utilization of a blockchain and helping that happen can really be transformational for what is an enormous market. There's some big dollars that are spent on this kind of advertising. It's hundreds of $billions. I think, James, you sent me an article earlier. It was $700 billion by like 2 years' time.
That is
right?
the projection, yeah. A growing market as well, which is...
this kind of advertising does work. And I think if you can make it more transparent and see where your money's being spent, and a blockchain is a great solution for that, it can have huge impacts for people creating content. It can have great impact for people selling goods. And I would just love to hear from both of you, what role do you think a blockchain has to play in that process? And how do you see it developing in the future?
Shall I go?
I don't mind. Yeah, I won't.
Take turns.
Yeah.
Very polite.
Flip a coin.
I think sadly, the advertising industry needs to prove that what it's doing works.
Yeah.
Going back to when I used to wait by the fax machine, you just run the campaign, you say it's delivered, and obviously James mentioned that as well. It's quite simple, right? But now there's a huge amount of accountability in the industry, right? Which totally makes sense, right? If you're a brand, you want to know what you've delivered has reached the audience you expect. And from a media owner side, we want to make sure and prove to our clients that what they did with us works. So we need to give insights back on of course volumes and things, but also who are the audience that consumed it, how much did they engage with it, perhaps if it was across social, like what the sentiment was on a video that we might have posted, so you can understand the emotions around people having on perhaps a video to do with the Olympics. We had the Olympics rights at Warner, so we did a lot of Olympics content. Stuff like that is giving a lot of value back to the brand. Not all of that is programmatic advertising, right? But just some context on the industry. So what we do, if I'm going to sell a 7-figure deal, I've really got to prove that it works, because that's not sustainable. It's like the next 7-figure deal, the one after that, right? We have to keep proving what we do works. So if you add a layer of I'm still learning about blockchain, by the way. If you add a layer of insight, which is truly immutable, it's 100% fact, it can be proven, particularly on the programmatic side, that exactly what's happened, what's delivered, you can see how that solves some of the challenges, because you're basically making it immutable for everyone in that chain. So there's quite clear applications for blockchain in that. Yeah,
and it's kind of you go upstream, James, what would the impacts of that be for you when you think about your media buying?
Well, look, it's very, very much considered now, I think, the sort of superior way of advertising, if possible. We always say, what industry at the moment is not looking at how it can use data and technology to deliver great business performance?
Yeah.
And you mentioned the sort of old ways of TV buying and sort of radio buying sort of back in the day. That was basically let's reach as many people as possible and hopefully we're going to reach people that want to buy our product that weren't doing before. Like this day and age now, in modern times, we're a lot more sophisticated, and you can far better understand the people who are really valuable to you and you really should be talking to. Pepsi drinkers, for example. And if you can really target your advertising spend to only reach those guys in a really meaningful way, then wow, that's probably going to bring you better ROI than the previous, right? Than the sort of more linear sort of spray and pray approach. So I think that, as we said, it's a really growing industry for that reason, because it's really effective. So we're talking about big numbers. So small incremental ways of making those numbers work as hard as possible are going to be quite big, right? And I think that some of the benefits of blockchain, probably just generally, but in our space, is we've touched on the transparency, right? We've touched on, I think, maybe the security. So an idea that what you're buying is what you're buying, and that's publicly available to be verified, I think is very strong. There is, as we've touched on, terms like domain spoofing and websites and environments pretending not to be what they are. That is almost eradicated, right? If you use blockchain or at least a sophisticated, high performing one, so the threat of fraud is reduced. And if you were, I guess, investing 2% of your budget that went onto fraudulent activity, again, we're talking about big numbers. So that is a lot of investment. So if you can eradicate that, then you're making quite big gains. What are the other things that we always talk about? Cost efficiency. Right. Cost efficiency. The idea of the decentralized network, right? That is sort of taking a lot of the operational costs, means that you guys are in a position to, or by using a blockchain, it can be a lot more cost effective. And again, even if that's a small percentage, it translates into quite big actual absolute numbers. So there probably is more than that, but those reasons are big reasons. I would say.
And as I said, it's like there's a lot of very complex applications of blockchains. And like very financially heavy ones. You like derivative markets, DEXs, lending, like really financially driven stuff that blockchains are great for. But equally, just reiterating what you said, really. But
go for it. Yeah, it was good.
The transformation, just understanding what goes on with your media buying, with your revenue generation, I don't think can be understated enough. And it does then, at least at Alchemy, like when you're looking to bring those dollars on chain for the first time, that's like a large off-chain liquidity pool when you think about it, that currently has no real mechanism to be on chain. So like using that to provide a benefit for people like yourselves that have an issue with the way the current existing system works, kind of gives birth to what can be some cool amalgamation of like DeFi and advertising, because you're bringing dollars that were never on chain, and there's cool stuff that you can do with that, as demonstrated by the blockchain in the financial sector. Like this is just another sector. It trades very similarly. You bid and you sell. Like the order books look very similar, but fundamentally, step one is let's figure out what's going on. Let's prove that that's what happened. Let's provide more value for the people that have those problems, and then see where that takes us. Now me, are painting quite a rosy picture on like the adoption. I think that I've said this before, but like brands that have lasted the test of time, like the guys you guys work for, like you don't just jump into the newest fad. Like you need to be considered about your approach and make sure it makes sense. Like as people that probably are very big fans of blockchains, like what do you guys think is like the things that you need to be wary of? Like how does Web3 or blockchain as an industry need to act or behave to have it be taken more seriously or adopted more quickly by massive brands that have been around for a very long time?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why, we often get called like legacy brands, right?
Yeah.
But these legacy brands are the people that actually have kind of disrupted the way that we kind of tend to live our lives day to day, or information that we get. And they're still around, not without the many challenges that there are, at keeping a big brand like that, because they do embrace new they do embrace technology. Cable television 40 years ago was brand new. It was like all of a sudden one type of content can own a whole channel. That was crazy. That's technology. So, ultimately, then fast forwarding today, as we're talking about programmatic being embraced 15 years ago, the industry's embraced it. And I think it gets embraced when it's kind of at a point of trust. Although there's naturally, we all have labs and we all have like innovation hubs, and I run a lot of the innovation of what I do in my other job. And ultimately, we have to be looking at this stuff. And my view is you have to look at it to understand it, to make it work for you. Because otherwise, someone else is going to do it and disrupt you. So, we have to keep an eye on it. And actually, when these sort of big companies and corporates go into something, it can just pop so hard because ultimately there's a trust and a stamp of approval. And if it's genuinely solving a problem that we're talking about, which is, I know you guys know all that. I'm sure all of your businesses are trying to solve some problem, right? Like, if it's genuinely solving a problem for us, we'll always look at it and embrace it. I think the industry as a whole, and I'm probably not telling you anything you need to know, but the importance of brand building. There's a reason why big brands exist, because they have a brand. You do all this targeted advertising, but you also have the really freaking cool Christmas ads every year, right?
Yeah,
Which everyone in the country sees, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, that's because you've got a huge brand, and same with Warner Brothers, we've got huge brands within it. So the importance of building your brand is really key. And then I think, we've spoken about the importance of data. Any narrative you have when you're going to a corporate, and I'm sure all your pitch decks or whatever, just make sure that it's backed up with data and facts. And if someone picks into it, or perhaps they've got a friend that is really a real expert, and they just go, hey mate, look at this, and they go, actually this bit's not true, then the whole thing kind of falls down. So I think, trust, building brands, and making sure that you're using data whenever you're talking to big companies about what you can solve for them, and facts. A lot of that sounds quite obvious, but that side, will make people on the corporate side feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I think, and the Web3 has a very quick pace, and I think there's something to be said for being a bit more patient, working slowly, proving that technology works. I think that is important because many people have made many promises about what blockchain can do and how it can do it, but you need to be cautious. You need to make the right decisions and move at the right time and move when there's eyeballs there, because that's when technology makes sense for brands that are they're not a particular technology brand. It's not a Web3 brand or a Web2 brand. It's just like a persistent brand that's used the right technology at the right time. I think that's super important. I don't know what you think, James, but
yeah, I'm quite keen to talk about three things: language, performance, and testing. And I haven't actually had too many interactions with blockchain companies, Web3 companies. It's actually mainly been you guys within the context of marketing.
Certainly, yeah.
But I have effectively pitched and talked about blockchain capabilities to a variety of clients. And I guess these are just sort of some things that I think have been quite helpful in that process, if any of you guys might be doing that. When it comes to language, I think it's you need to be sort of quite choiceful of the language that you use, and also sort of maybe take a time to unpack a term if it might not be something that the other party is familiar with. And I typically try and separate blockchain, Web3, and cryptocurrency if I can. I try and use blockchain as a very sort of functional word and a capability, something that is actually, unlocking a use case, and you can use it. I talk about Web3 as more of a sort of a cultural movement sometimes, honestly, in its spaces, its environments, its places, in that kind of context. And then for crypto, I actually will only use that term if I know it's going to be additive, and I know it's not going to be a distraction, because sometimes conversations can end up going in a way that you don't necessarily need it to. It doesn't really matter. So being choiceful with language, I think, can be quite helpful. I think from a performance point of view, I think it's really also about just absolutely knowing that what blockchain can bring to the table is a really high level of performance. It's got a really bloody good chance of being better than alternatives. So just being really confident in the pitch. And then finally, just embracing the idea of testing, specifically in marketing, and it might be the same in other industries. people are very welcome and will embrace testing new things and seeing if things can be done better. There will often be a pot of budget for any campaign that you can put towards trialing new solutions, and if they're great, you can scale them up. So maybe what I'm saying there is you don't necessarily need to go for massive, huge deals all the time. You can be quite comfortable with just proving, to Ben's point, proving efficacy, proving that your performance can deliver in the way that you know it can, and then going from there. So that's to your point, I guess, on the slow sort of incremental gains, which maybe is more true of our industry than others, but certainly I think some good advice from what I've seen in my experience.
Can I just?
Yeah.
I just want to pick up on the language bit there. I mean, I've spent a lot of time with this guy, telling him not to confuse me, and like
You're still working on it.
Still working on it, yeah. But like the language is really important. But I'd also add like a layer of education. Like it's like a privilege for me to be here with you all because you're helping me learn, right? So that makes you valuable. So if you can be an educator to someone you're selling to or someone you're looking to work with, in a way that doesn't make them feel stupid, right? Particularly the media industry is full of big egos, right? We're all quite sociable, we all love what we do, but there's also big egos and people don't like to be confused. But if you can be like a really good partner in educating them on your world, then you become really valuable and you're kind of selling to them through educating them. And I think that is really, really important and a big opportunity.
Yeah, I think James and I were actually talking about this last night, but I feel very fortunate that I get to have conversations with you both about what is like a revolutionary new way to approach infrastructure to solve problems in the real world. Like, I'm in a fortunate position. I think there is a responsibility on me and Alchemy as a business to wield that power wisely, like use it for solving an actual purpose, helping keep the internet ad funded by making the rails much more efficient and like do a better job. Not to say that other tech companies have done a bad job, but like do a better job given that we now have access to technology that allows us to do a better job and provide more revenue, like provide more insights and transparency in what you're buying, like just wield that power carefully and not be, what's the word I'm looking for? That doesn't matter, but like not be reckless with it, like there is responsibility. We have the opportunity to solve some massive issues and keeping the internet free, and that's an important job that we need to do. So I think unless you guys have anything more to add, I thoroughly enjoyed that. That was a brilliant conversation. I look forward to working with you both much more closely in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I know that, I don't know how much time we've got left. We could riff.
1 minute 42 seconds.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, great. Well, just to say it's been a pleasure. Yeah, thanks very much for having me, Ben, Alchemy team, Rob. It was great.
Awesome.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much. Hope that was educational.
Thanks.
Cheers, everyone.